Exactly. Can you survive, 2 hours talking straight into a microphone?
Yeah,
I know it's not for the faint of heart.
exactly. Well, it's only because of all of you who attend. That's why we do it. Literally. If you stopped attending, we wouldn't do it. So if you want to get rid of us, don't attend.
So, Patty, how was hold your water used when you were younger?
Um, well, I'll give you a hint. It had something to do with water at the other end.
Ah, okay.
That's funny.
And nobody would ever have thought that one day we'd be walking around with plastic bottles filled with water.
Yeah, no, I remember like seeing the news reports from the 1970s, like they played them for laughs on YouTube of like someday they'll be trying to bottle water and selling it to people.
Yeah. And people are like, that's ridiculous. Who would ever want to do that?
Yeah, well, nobody really, other than maybe Richard Nixon and a few people like that, nobody really believed in climate change all that much in the 70s, did they?
No.
There was a view that oil was doing something to the atmosphere. That's why there was
Yeah.
the whole anti-lead campaign, but I think it was about lead poisoning more than it was environmental damage.
Well, that
Yeah.
and the, I do remember when they suddenly discovered there was a huge hole in the ozone.
Well, that was a big deal. Like that
Yeah.
was huge.
Especially
that
if
was
you're like me, I grew up on a farm. We were walking around. I mean, nobody ever heard of sunscreen in those days. So you can tell now. I mean, if you look at my arms, there's a big difference between the sleeve ending and the rest of the arm. It's just, I mean, who would have thought, you know?
Yeah.
It's funny in I don't know how many of you have had this feeling during the COVID period, but like you try to find a pin in your house that works. It's like, because I think we've been home so long for a lot of us that have worked from home or whatever. And then you just go from like non-working pin to non-working pin.
I just discovered that I have this mound of pens that I don't remember when the last time I used any particular pen in that mound was, but I'm scared to try and figure out which ones work.
That's right. That's right. And then, and of course, I think a lot of us suffer from the like, I don't want to go out and buy new pens, like thesis, right? Like I'm going to use every pen I can get from anywhere. And it's kind of funny.
That is funny. My pen fetish has more to do with the ones you can use as a stylus because my fingers are just not that dexterous. So
Sure.
so
Yeah,
I tend to grab those every time I see them.
Yeah, my youngest daughter, who's in her 20s, so she studied kind of art like as a minor. And so I always buy her like a present, that kind of stuff. And I bought her 2 years ago, maybe. I think it was 2 years ago, beginning of COVID. I think for her birthday. There's like this, and I don't know anything about them, but there's these like very, high-end, really special art pencils, which are also like the same brand makes ones for writing and calligraphy and all that. And it's like the pencils, and it's all these different grades. It's Japanese, all these different grades of these pencils, and it's made from like magical Japanese trees and magical
So exactly. So
Japanese
pencils that should
lead.
cost $10 cost, 85.
Well, I mean, they're not that bad. I mean, as a whole set, yeah, they can get pretty high, but as individual ones, they're instead of 10 cents each or whatever, 30 cents each, they're more like $2, $4, $6, $8 or whatever. But yeah, it's I mean, I will say this. I mean, just sort of like she set one up for me to use. They definitely feel different. I mean, they do feel fancy. I mean, that like there's a softness.
You said that, Aaron, because most of us who write, a lot of people do not understand our writing fetish. So it really does make a difference. It absolutely does. It's hard to explain to anybody else, but
exactly.
No, it's the static friction, right? If you start, right, if you have a boulder on the ground and you push it, the initial push to get it moving is more than the push that you need subsequently to keep it moving, right? That's kinetic friction. So I think that the niceness of the pen limits that static friction, lessens that. So writing is just an easier process to get into.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's also the weight.
Yep.
Yeah, I have pen, if it doesn't have sufficient weight, it doesn't work for me. So most of those like stick pens that that are floating around everywhere, I can't stand them, partly just because they have no substance, like. And, you know, add that to the ballpoint is like really ridiculous. So yeah, I think there's a lot more to it than a lot of people think about.
Yeah, and then I wound up getting her because I don't know, I kind of got into let me give her presents until, you know, that's like a very parental thing to do. Like they're a little interested in something and then you like hit them with a tsunami of it and they're not really that interested in it, but whatever, they take it. But yeah, so there's like, I think it's an Italian or French company that makes some, it's called Palomino Blackwing. That's like, and it's all these, you know, 602, 502, all these different categories. It was interesting because when you try out the different ones, it's like you were saying, there's like a friction, weight, sort of softness blend together.
Balance,
I mean,
yeah.
in a lot of ways, it's almost like car suspension in a weird way.
Yes.
Like
So until we have our documentary on the quality of pen throughout history, let's get started
good.
here.